There are stories that feel less like fiction and more like a memory you were never meant to inherit. Tonight's account was sent to us by a man who says he doesn't have long left to live. He claims what happened to his family decades ago on a farm in northern Sweden was never written down until now. Whether you believe him or not, he insists every word is true. This is the Whites. Sit back, listen carefully, and remember, some lands never forget the blood that feeds them. I suppose there's no reason to lie anymore. At my age, memory is less of a comfort and more of a slow punishment. I'm 79 now, and the doctors say my heart could stop any month. Maybe that's why I finally decided to tell this story, to let it breathe in the open air before I'm buried beneath it. I don't want redemption. I just want someone to know that the land remembers. I was born on a small farm in northern Sweden, a patch of earth hemmed in by pine and wheat and silence. The nearest village was 5 miles east, and the road there was no more than a scar of gravel between fields. Our house was painted a deep iron red, the kind you still find on barns up north. My father built it himself, and the corners of the windows were trimmed in white. My mother filled the windowsills with flowers that died every winter, but always came back in spring. We lived quietly. Father, mother, my little sister, Ingrid, and I. There were a few cows, a pair of horses, and the endless chores that come with living off the land. To a stranger, we must have seemed perfectly ordinary. We were not. Father had a way of speaking about the soil as if it were alive. He used to say the ground could hear us, that it could be kind if treated with respect, or cruel if we forgot our place. I thought it was just one of his superstitions, like spitting over his shoulder before the first harvest, or leaving a bowl of porridge on the porch at Christmas. But it wasn't superstition to him. It was worship. He called them helpers when Mother or Ingrid was within earshot. Later, I learned the word he used when he thought we couldn't hear Vitra the Whites. According to him, they were ancient spirits that lived under the soil, older than the forests, older than man. They kept the land fertile, guarded the animals, and asked only for respect and small gifts. When I was little, I used to leave them shiny stones or bits of ribbon at the edge of the woods, because Ingrid told me that's what made the crops grow tall. I laughed when she said she saw tiny footprints in the frost the next morning. It was easy to laugh then. Years pass differently on a farm. Seasons are your clock harvest, your heartbeat. That year, 1955, I think the wheat was heavier than ever, and Father said the helpers were pleased. He spoke about them often, and sometimes late at night, I would hear him muttering near the doorway, as if reciting a prayer. Once I woke to the sound of something scratching under the floorboards. When I asked about it, he only said, "They're restless tonight. Go back to sleep." I tried to believe him. I really did. Ingrid was 7 that summer, wild-haired, and always covered in paint or straw. She made little dolls and animals out of corn husks and bits of cloth. She said she left them as thank you gifts for the helpers. I teased her for it, and she scowled in that way only a younger sister can. Then one afternoon, while playing near the tree line, we heard a cow cry out an awful broken sound that wasn't quite a moo. We thought it was Father's bull at first, but the sound came from deeper in the woods. Out of childish curiosity, we followed it. The trees thickened fast, blotting out the sky. Even at noon, it was dark in there, cold enough that our breath turned white. We found the cow, or what was left of it, in a small clearing surrounded by stones. 6, maybe 7 of them, set in a rough circle. The animal lay inside its body, cut open, steam rising from the wound. I remember the color most of all. Red shouldn't be that bright against snow. Ingrid started to cry. I tried to hush her, but before I could, we heard footsteps behind us, heavy, fast. Father burst through the brush, his face pale, his sickle dripping. He didn't say a word at first, just grabbed my arm and dragged me all the way home, while Ingrid trailed behind us, sobbing. I'd never seen him so furious. When we got back, he slammed the door and shouted until his voice cracked. Then he sent Ingrid to her room and made me sit at the kitchen table. What you saw, he said, finally was a sacrifice. I didn't understand. He tried to explain sometimes the helpers wanted more than porridge or ribbons. Sometimes they demanded blood, and a farmer who refused them would lose his harvest, or worse. I remember staring at the flicker of the candlelight on his face, thinking he looked older than he had that morning. "Do you know why we've never gone hungry?" he asked. "Because we give back. Because we respect what we've borrowed." I wanted to ask, what if they ask for something you can't give? But I was too afraid of the answer. That night, I heard him leave the house. The door creaked, boots on snow, and then the faint sound of a song I didn't recognize, low and rhythmic, carried by the wind until it faded into the trees. Mother told us the next day to forget what we'd seen. She said, Father only wanted to scare us into staying away from the woods. But I knew she didn't believe her own words. Time passed, as it always does. The memory blurred but never faded. And then, Mother fell ill. The doctor called it tuberculosis, the White Death. She coughed until she bled, and her skin grew pale as linen. Father said the helpers would take care of her. He told us not to worry. But every morning, her sheets were damp, not with sweat, but with a thin layer of grey dust, like the ash from a cold fire. Ingrid swore she saw small handprints near the pillow one dawn, but when she tried to show me, they were gone. Father grew quieter as Mother worsened. He spent long hours alone in the barn. Sometimes when I brought him water, I'd find bowls of milk and apples arranged in strange patterns on the floor. He said it was just tradition. When Mother finally had to be taken to the hospital, Ingrid locked herself in her room. The house felt emptier than ever. That's when Father began to teach me the old ways, as he called them, how to prepare the offerings, how to speak the words, how to show respect. He said it was time I became a man. At first, I thought he meant the usual chores. Then one night, he brought me to the same clearing where the cow had been killed. The stones were still there, half buried in moss. He told me to kneel. "This is where the land listens best," he whispered. "Everything we have came from here, and everything returns here sooner or later." He placed a dead hare on the stones, poured milk over it, and began to hum. I recognized the melody. It was the same one I'd heard the night after the cow. I wish I could say I felt nothing, but the air changed thicker, colder. I swear I saw the mist twist above the stones, forming shapes that almost looked like faces. When the humming stopped, Father let out a breath and said, "They're satisfied." We walked home in silence. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing the faint patter of small feet on the roof, like rain, that never touched the ground. Once I thought I heard whispering through the walls, soft foreign words that crawled beneath my skin. By morning, the whispers were gone, and so was one of the milk bowls we'd left outside. A few weeks later, Mother came home from the hospital. The doctors called it a miracle. Father called it gratitude. Ingrid called it impossible. I didn't call it anything. I just watched her sleep and listened for footsteps in the dark. For a while, life felt normal again. The fields thrived, the animals were healthy, and Father smiled for the first time in months. But I noticed something else too. Every mirror in the house had been covered. He said it was for protection, from what he never explained. Then winter came early. Snow piled high against the door, and nights stretched longer than they should. Father woke me before dawn one morning, his face gray in the lantern light. "It's your turn now," he said. "You remember the cow?" I nodded. "Today you'll give them something living." He chose the oldest bull gunner, too sick to last the winter. We led him into the forest, through the blizzard, the rope stiff in my frozen hands. The clearing waited for us, like an open wound in the snow. Father made me smear the bull's hide with ox fat and draw strange marks on its forehead, using red ochre from a small pouch. The smell of blood and iron filled the air even before the blade touched skin. When it was over, he told me to dance. He'd shown me the steps before jerky, uneven motions that felt wrong in my body. It wasn't a dance for people, it was a mimicry of something dying. I moved as he had taught me, and the wind seemed to move with me. My vision blurred, my legs felt heavy, and then everything went silent. That's when I saw it. At first, it looked like smoke rising from the snow. Then the smoke thickened, shimmered, and took shape. A small figure, no taller than a child, but its body was a shifting mass of black liquid metal, flowing and reforming like it couldn't decide what to be. It wore a white mask, perfectly smooth, except for two black ringed holes where the eyes should be, and a narrow slit for the mouth, curved down in a permanent frown. It tilted its head, studying me. The air pulsed. Then it spoke without moving its mouth. "Wrong." The word hit me like cold water. I ran. When I reached the house, the door was open. The kitchen was wrecked. Chairs, overturned glass, shattered, the table split in two. Mother was gone. Ingrid sat at the bottom of the stairs, staring at nothing. Father beside her, gripping his axe so tightly, his knuckles had turned white. She told us what happened in a flat, distant voice. She'd heard scratching on the door, thought it was the wind, went to tell Mother. Mother told her to hide. She crawled under her bed and waited. Then came the footsteps, many of them pattering across the floorboards. Something laughed high and broken. She heard the door creak, the whisper of voices, and then a scream, then silence. By the time Father burst in with the torch, the house was empty. Except for her. He didn't cry. Neither did I. We just waited for morning. When dawn came, we found tracks in the snow, tiny footprints, hundreds of them, circling the house before disappearing into the woods. Father buried an empty coffin that afternoon. He stopped talking after that. Winter dragged on like a punishment. The world outside our windows was white and empty, and inside the house, everything felt hollow. Father barely spoke anymore. He'd sit by the stove, staring into the flames, as if waiting for them to speak back. Ingrid stopped drawing. She used to fill the walls of her room with color, but after Mother vanished, she wouldn't even touch a brush. I tried to work the farm alone, though the fields were buried under snow. The animals were restless. They refused to eat, pacing in their stalls, as if they sensed something moving beneath the ground. At night, I'd hear faint scratching, always the same, always, from the same corner near the barn. I told Father once, and he just said, "They're looking for what's theirs." He didn't elaborate. There were nights when I'd catch him outside barefoot in the snow, whispering toward the tree line. Sometimes I saw lights flicker between the pines, tiny shifting glows like lanterns, though no one lived within miles. He claimed the whites were protecting us, but I couldn't shake the thought that they were simply waiting. By February, the silence had grown unbearable. Ingrid began sleepwalking. I'd wake in the middle of the night and find her standing by the window, staring out into the snow. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. When I tried to wake her, she'd scream an empty, distant sound that didn't belong to her. Father said it was because she was touched by them now. He looked almost proud when he said it. One morning, I found him in the barn surrounded by a circle of stones, smaller versions of the ones in the forest. In the center lay a bowl filled with milk and blood. I didn't ask what animal it came from. He was murmuring under his breath. I caught fragments words about balance, the debt, and the road. When he realized I was watching, he turned on me with eyes that looked like someone else's. "Never disturb the path," he hissed. "You hear me? Never cross it. They walk where they always have. Their roads are older than ours." That night, I dreamt of our fields, stripped bare of hundreds of pale figures crawling through the furrows like worms. When I woke, I could still hear the whisper of their movements. The thaw came late that year. When it did, the snow melted into thick mud, and the ground stank of rot. One morning, Ingrid ran in from the fields, her face white as linen. "The soil's moving," she said. I followed her out and saw it for myself, the ground pulsing as if something breathed beneath it. Father only nodded. "They're waking," he said. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. Later that night, he told me he was going to the woods. "They're angry," he muttered. "Your mother's disappearance broke the covenant. We have to remind them we're loyal." He took the sickle with him. I stayed awake until dawn, but he didn't return. When I finally found the courage to follow, I discovered his footprints leading into the forest, and then vanishing halfway through the path, as though he'd been swallowed by the snow. No blood, no signs of struggle, just emptiness. I told Ingrid we should leave. She refused. "If we leave, they'll follow," she said. "They only forgive if you stay." For a few weeks, we survived by habit alone. I fed the animals. Ingrid sat by the window and spoke to something I couldn't see. Her voice had changed lower, calmer, as though she were repeating another person's words. I asked her once who she was talking to. "The ones beneath," she said. That was when I decided to run. But before I could, Father came back. He appeared at dusk, walking out of the woods as if nothing had happened. His clothes were soaked and torn, his hands raw. He smelled of earth and decay. I shouted his name, but he didn't respond. When he finally looked at me, I realized his eyes weren't the same. They were pale, almost colorless, and unfocused. "I made it right," he said. "They showed me what to do." That night, he built a fire behind the barn and started digging. The earth was soft and black, and he dug for hours without resting. Ingrid sat nearby, humming the tune Father used to hum when he prayed. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "We're giving them back what's theirs." "What does that mean?" I asked. He smiled a small broken smile. "You'll see." By morning, the pit was done. He told me to bring one of the cows. I refused. He struck me across the face so hard, I fell into the mud. "I've carried this burden long enough," he said. "It's yours now. He shoved the sickle into my hands and pointed toward the barn. Go, do what I taught you. I didn't move. I couldn't. He screamed until his voice cracked, then disappeared into the trees again. Hours passed. The sky darkened. I stayed in the house with Ingrid, who had gone completely silent. She sat by the table, her eyes fixed on the doorway. I asked her what she was waiting for. They're coming for him, she said, and if he fails, they'll come for us. Just before midnight, I heard the first sound like branches snapping, then another, and then the unmistakable rhythm of footsteps, many of them circling the barn. I wanted to believe it was animals, but the rhythm was too even, too deliberate. I grabbed Father's lantern and stepped outside. The snow glowed faintly in the light, but beyond the reach of the flame, the darkness seemed thicker than usual. The barn door was open, swaying gently. Something moved inside. Ingrid, I whispered, stay here. She didn't answer. I crept toward the barn, the lantern trembling in my hand. Every step sank deep into the snow with a soft crunch that sounded deafening in the silence. When I reached the doorway, the smell hit me first iron and rot, heavy enough to taste. The light flickered, and I saw him. Father hung from the rafters, nailed to the beams in a grotesque imitation of a cross. His torso was open, his head tilted back, his face frozen in an expression I can't forget. The sickle was buried in his chest. At his feet, the ground was covered in footprints, hundreds of them small and sharp, pressed into the dirt like the tracks of 1,000 rats. And they were there. They clung to the walls and beams, dozens of them, pale-masked things, their bodies rippling like shadows, made solid. Some crouched, some hung upside down like bats. Their masks gleamed white in the lantern light, and behind the holes of their eyes glowed faint yellow rings. None of them moved. They just watched me. My throat went dry. I took a step back. One of them tilted its head, the way an animal does when it's deciding what you are. Then it opened its mouth. The slit in the mask stretched wider, and I saw rows of thin needle-like teeth behind it. The sound that came out wasn't a voice, it was a chorus, 1,000 whispers layered into one. Balance. Something snapped behind me, and the lantern went out. The dark was alive with movement. Hands cold slick, impossibly strong, grabbed my arms, my legs. I kicked, screamed, clawed, but they didn't stop. The air was filled with the smell of earth and iron. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The hands were gone. The barn was empty. Father's body was gone too. Only the sickle remained half buried in the dirt. I stumbled back to the house, my clothes soaked through my breath, ragged. When I burst through the door, Ingrid was gone. A chair lay tipped over a trail of wet footprints leading to the stairs. I followed them to a room. The window was open, snow blowing in. On the windowsill lay one of her straw dolls, its head missing its chest, filled with dirt. I called her name until my voice broke. No answer. Outside, something moved along the tree line, dozens of shapes watching, waiting. I slammed the window shut and didn't sleep until dawn. I don't remember leaving the house. I only know I was running barehanded and half mad through snow that felt deeper with every step. The dawn was gray, not bright, and the light seemed wrong, flat like it had been painted over the world. My footprints vanished almost as soon as I made them, as though the ground was swallowing them whole. I didn't know where I was going. Maybe I thought I could find Ingrid, or maybe I just wanted to be away from that house. But the forest loomed ahead, black between the trees, and some instinct told me to stay out of it. I turned towards the road instead. Halfway there, I saw something in the snow. A trail, not footprints, but drag marks deep and steady, leading away from the direction of the barn. I followed them until they stopped at the frozen river. The ice was broken, jagged, like something heavy had forced its way through. I knew then that father was gone, truly gone. The rest of that day is a blur. I wandered until I found an old truck in the neighbor's shed, one that hadn't been used in years. The keys were still hanging on the wall. I drove until the engine coughed and died on the edge of town, stumbled into the first house with a light in the window, and collapsed on their porch. When I woke, a man in a wool coat was standing over me. He called the police. They searched the property, of course. They found the house in ruin. The barn half burned, the animals gone. They asked questions I couldn't answer. I told them about the footprints, the masks, the whispering. They said I was in shock. No one ever found Ingrid. They said she'd wandered into the woods and frozen to death. But they never found a body. The villagers stopped visiting that part of the valley. They said the ground was cursed, that nothing grew there anymore. I stayed with relatives for a while, far to the south. I tried to forget. But forgetting doesn't work when something has already carved itself into your bones. Years passed. I built a life of sorts. A wife, children, even grandchildren. I told them I grew up in the city. They never questioned it. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the house is still and the wind presses against the windows, I hear it again. The faint patter of small feet on the roof, the low whisper crawling through the cracks in the walls. I've told myself, it's only memory. That's what I have to believe. But belief doesn't stop the knocking. About 10 years ago, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, an old black and white shot of a red farmhouse. My family's house. It looked newer, freshly painted, like the picture had been taken decades ago. But in the bottom corner, barely visible in the snow, were footprints. Dozens of them, small, bare. The back of the photograph said only, "They remember." I burned it, but the smell lingered for days, iron ash and earth. I told my wife it was nothing. She believed me. I think she wanted to. Last winter, I heard from someone who lives near where the farm used to stand. He said a new couple bought the land city people who wanted a quiet life. He said they spent their first few months repairing the place, talking about raising animals, planting crops. Then one night, they vanished. No struggle, no signs of robbery. The police found their truck parked on the road, engine running, doors open. The only thing left behind was a single bowl of milk, frozen solid on the porch. He asked if I thought it meant anything. I told him I didn't know. The truth is, I do. I've been dreaming again. In the dreams, I'm back in the clearing. The stones are clean now, gleaming like ice. Something stirs beneath them, something shifting, ancient, patient. I see a face rise through the soil, a white mask framed by shadows, its mouth curved into that same endless frown. Sometimes I wake before it speaks. Other times I don't. The last dream was different. It didn't speak to me. It whispered through me. The words felt like cold water pouring down my throat. The debt is not paid. I haven't slept much since then. I keep the lights on. I keep salt by the doors, milk on the windowsill, the way Father did. I tell myself, it's only habit. The other night, I thought I heard Ingrid's voice outside my window. Soft, calling my name. I wanted to open it. God, I wanted to. But I remembered Father's words. Never open the door when the land calls you by name. I sat there in the dark until dawn, and when the light came, I saw footprints in the frost outside, small ones, bare ones. They circled the house, once then stopped, beneath my window. I haven't touched the curtain since. I've written this so that someone knows, so that if they ever find my house empty, they'll understand what took me. I don't know how long I have left. Sometimes I think I hear them under the floorboards, like the ground itself is breathing. I tell myself I'm imagining it. But deep down, I know better. Because last night, I woke to a sound I haven't heard in 60 years. The sound of a spoon scraping the bottom of a bowl. If the story unsettled you good, that means you listened. The man who sent this confession passed away a few weeks after writing it. His property still stands empty and untouched. Local records say no one has dared to buy it. Some nights, hikers say they see a pale figure standing by the tree line or hear small footsteps in the snow. Was it only superstition, or is the land still collecting its due? Thank you for listening to NightLore. Until next time, keep your lights low and your windows closed.